we received a $1.5 million media prize from Publicis Health Media. It was the week before that I decided that we had to open our market to opiates and to all intranasal drugs. So I was going through that motion, and the call to be invited to present that day happened while I was on a family holiday in the mountains of West Virginia, and I didn't have cell reception, and I was like, but I knew what the prize money was, and I wanted to be on stage and present. So I went and I bought a satellite phone.
Hey there, it's Yaniv, and you're listening to the School of Innovation podcast. My guest this week is Marcel Botha. Marcel is an entrepreneur, engineer, architect, and investor. Through his consulting firm 10x Beta, Marcel has helped numerous medical professionals test, develop, and commercialize products ranging from electronic stethoscopes to surgical instruments. Marcel co-founded several companies, including Patients Pending, where he developed a groundbreaking diabetes product named TimeSeine that helps diabetics manage their insulin compliance, and Infant Ventures, a company innovating at the stress points between infants and parents. Marcel was one of the investors behind the much acclaimed Spoonie feeding product. In this episode, Marcel and I talk about SpiraWave, a low-cost ventilator that he and his team built and shipped in just 30 days to help New York fight the COVID pandemic. Here's my conversation with Marcel. So Marcel, welcome back to school.
Thank you.
It's great to have you, man.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I'm sure you've heard this from many people, but we have gone into hyper-accelerated isolation with speaking on Zoom for like 8 hours with the same goddamn people every day, and now so these are these moments where you talk about something that is not related to something that has to be done by this afternoon or tomorrow, are rare glimpses into what a social future awaits us when we let out of our houses again.
Oh man, I hope this is not the social future that awaits us, but
no, it just meaning there are people out there that are cool and worth having a beer with, or a glass of wine or a coffee in the future, or a meal.
There is nothing I would like more than to have a glass of beer with you now, my man, because we can connect on so many levels, and we sort of share we don't. It's so we overlap, our backgrounds sort of overlap, but I think that sort of gives us sort of this instant or many points of connections, right? So we can explore that during the discussion. But maybe before we start, let's talk about you. Give us some context. People who are listening now or watching us now, who are you and how did you get here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm Marcel Botha, South African, born in Pretoria, South Africa, but grew up in Cape Town. Age 10 to 17, I was in Cape Town, and then I studied in a town called Port Elizabeth. If you know South Africa, it's basically 500 miles east of Cape Town, so just along the coast. And while there, I was studying architecture, 2 degrees in architecture, and then a diploma in photography at the adjacent school. And I was very interested in design and photography and advertising. I received a scholarship for an advertising school in Cape Town that I was considering going to for a hot second. And then I was persuaded by my dad to finish finish what you started, right? Finish the first degrees. And then when you're done with that, you can go and figure out
do
the next
responsible
step.
Thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even a responsible thing. It's it's about the integrity to say, is what I'm doing now a mistake? If so, then rapidly change. If it's not a mistake, if it's the right thing that you can build upon with the next thing, then stay, finish it, do the next thing. It's And then because we have over the last 25 years, the opportunity to pivot constantly and like a boxer, like a featherweight boxer, and change your mind the whole time has just increased with the amount of access, media, and sort of like distraction. So I think these were principles that helped me just maintain in my early 20s, and they kept me on track. Went from there to London, finished my architecture studies there, then went to Italy for some design direction at Domus Academy in Milan, and I was exploring whether to do a master's there, and instead went to, in 2001, summer of 2001, right before 9/11, went to Boston to check out 3D printing and all this rage at the Media Lab at MIT. And for the next 2-3 years, I was a MIT tourist, I would say, until my friends made me finish my application and apply to all to Stanford, MIT, and Harvard. I think I never finished the Stanford application. I was dead set on MIT.
Like even in that short intro, we have a couple of overlapping experiences, because I wanted to study architecture. So we both studied architecture. I wanted to study architecture in Italy. I actually went and learned the language and spent, I think it was 3 months in Florence, studying the language, studying architecture, got accepted, but then got accepted to architecture school in Israel, and then decided to come back.
Yeah, it's so tough, right? Because if you are, the Americans have, the whole in-state, out-of-state, and private school system, so it just gets exponentially more expensive. Like an African or Israeli kid trying to study in Europe or the US, like it's very expensive relative to what opportunities you just have at home, right? And so you have to I had to be very calculated in terms of when I made those jumps, to also understand the economics, and because the freedom of movement that I have today, I didn't have 25 years ago. It was highly engineered. Considered, it was like playing chess constantly with the INS, with the British, with the Italians. And today it's just, today it's like you walk in with your American passport and it just, you do whatever you want. It's like, not in a bad way, but it's just the amount of passports and visas that I've paid for and that I've stamped in my South African passport until 4 or 5 years ago when I became a US citizen.
So you went to MIT. We went to the same program, the SMARCS, the Design and Computation SMARCS program. You finished that. I assume you start working with the Media Lab after you get exposed to that, or like what happened there?
Bill Mitchell, who was the head of the Media Lab at the time, and I met him in London in 2001, and I saw him at a lecture, and I briefly just introduced myself, and he said, "Yeah, you should come check the place out." But but then I realized he told that to 500 people every day.
And he invited everyone.
Yeah, but I did show up, right? And I think Adelmo Dias Santos, who is a South African architect or South African born architect, who was the dean of the School of Architecture and Planning when I was accepted. So I did, what any South African would do, is I walked into her office without an appointment, shook her hand, said, "This is who I am. I'm here to basically make myself, contribute in a meaningful way." And she laughed and said, "No, make an appointment." And it's she and I had a good rapport, and like still when I see her on MIT's campus, she's retired now, but I every now and then bump into her. That same week that I started, I realized that Bill Mitchell, who I met in 2001, was hosting this class at the Media Lab called the Smart Cities, the city car, and so I jumped on applying for that course, and I was I wanted to take this car design course, and had no idea what I was letting myself into. Met a bunch of crazy people who are all still friends today. I think I did that 5 semesters of that. I think I stayed even longer at MIT after my first degree into my second degree at the Media Lab, to still negotiate my transition out. Was I going to stay another year, finish my Media Lab degree, start my PhD, or was I going to join a startup? So I ended up joining a startup, which was one of the first IoT companies out of MIT in 2006. built social networking hardware for dogs that became hand washing compliance
I remember that. That was
systems.
Sniff Labs. Yeah.
Sniff Labs, yes. Ridiculous.
Awesome name. Awesome. Genius.
Yeah, in that year, no one was even tracking VC spending in the pet space. We got private equity or like family office money, about $6 million, to develop this hardware. And now, I think a year ago, in the same space, there was about $600 million in investment. So we were so far ahead of the curve. We were doing what couldn't be done really at that point, because you didn't have the smartphone ecosystem to tie into, you didn't have the app economy. It was everything that our system was, we built from the ground up. And it was just these amazing engineers that I got to work with.
This was 2007?
It was 2005, 6, and 7,
6, 7.
Through 9, and then they went into the hand washing compliance systems in 2009. And it was a really successful sort of precursor to what I think that industry became. But I think if we were doing that for a large corporation like Qualcomm and capturing all the IP in the space, I think we would have been extremely successful as a skunkworks. But it's a startup. You only have one chance.
Yes, you're focused on growth, very narrow perspective.
Yeah. And the reality was that no one was buying a $300 dog tag and web server setup that their smart cousin needed to set up for them for $300 the week that Lehman Brothers failed.
Oh man. Yeah. That's just timing. Yeah.
Talk about timing, right? But so much learned, so many relationships built in both Southeast Asia, US, all around the world. Some of the people I work with still today on a daily basis came from that project.
That's incredible. And you got your feet wet, like you got skin in the game, right? You built an appetite for entrepreneurship.
The intersection of design, business, and engineering, and building product companies out of that. When we said the ventilator project, when we did that in March and April, people are like, oh, you did it in 30 days. I'm like, no, we took 10, 15 years of experience and we brought together one of the best consortium teams in New York City. So it took 10, 15 years to become an overnight success, right? The reality is it could have never been done if we started with a fresh team who didn't know each other on day one. Maybe if an asteroid was about to hit us, but you need motivation to get it done in 30 days.
That's the Hollywood story. We're not there.
It was almost like that.
This is hustle and grind for more than 10 years.
The thing about entrepreneurs is like we have we have limited memory for the pain that we went through in the past. We are always just thinking about how awesome this new idea is that we're gonna focus on, right?
It's like giving birth. It's like my wife always says, I cannot remember how painful it was to give birth. And that's why I gave birth 3 times.
We also have 3 kids, and it took me a long time to persuade my wife that we do not need a 4th. And it's like now 2 years after the 3rd one, she's like, maybe she agrees, but I'm not in the clear. You're never totally in the clear.
You're never in the clear. Yeah, you don't know. We're going through COVID, so what other surprises can we, Cool. So from there on, you kind of go off on a sort of a trajectory of experimentation. Like you spin out, like, right, company after company.
I finished the work in Boston. Then I went on about a year and a half of experimentation, working with the ad industry, working with some MIT grads in New York, where we were advising the ad industry on how to use Twitter and Facebook to manipulate large groups of people or encourage large group of people. And
be careful. I don't want this podcast to shut down.
No, but we were using the same tools back then to entice people to do crowdsourced innovation as Cambridge Analytica used to entice people to vote for in their own against their own interests. It's like, because you can it was amazing, and I went on a hiatus of using social media, at least Twitter, for a long time, when I saw what the things that you could affect by, speaking to somebody in another country that just, needs these bit of social tidbits, and then sending them free stuff on behalf of a brand to entice them to have a competition in their backyard or their local store that has nothing to do with us. We're connecting. We're brokers, right? And we canceled Christmas in 2009, 2010, did this experiment, and it was crazy the amount of reach you had while sitting in a chair in Flatiron District, right?
Right. Thousands of miles away.
Yeah, and so we did all these crazy experiments, and then it culminated in the project with Starbucks and Beta Cup, where we did the crowdsourced innovation project for rethinking paper cup consumption, and that was very widely distributed, very well received. But early days in terms of my product development transition out of my first startup, I
You're
jumped
still
onto
wearing the ads hat, or like the marketing hat, or?
No, I was looking at sort of like, how do you use crowdsourced innovation to drive conversation around brands? And so it was, we worked with McDonald's, Omnicom, like OMD in Denmark. We did, who else did we work with? Obviously, Starbucks was a sponsor of Beta Cup.
Was this under the Midnight Commercial banner, or
no, it was not.
no?
I never worked with Midnight Commercial. It was under Metopo. Metopo was a project that I did with Sean and Andrea Abramson. I know Sean was also at MIT a couple of years ahead of us, and we had a great time. Just like the economy, the world was recovering from the financial crisis in 2008, and we had to hustle, like to figure out like who's going to part with their money doing crazy stuff around social and brands and product development. Obviously, I did that stage. Medical device development and medical IP development has always been sort of like in my backyard, my play area, or my sandpit, they say. My dad's a surgeon. He was one of the pioneers of endoscopic surgery in South Africa. And my mom was an ICU nurse before she became an artist later on. And so I grew up in a family where I was exposed to medical technologies all the time. I helped my dad operate on pig livers when I was 12. And so what happened is that while I was running all those, I'm going to call them like manufactured stories, like, talking about brands and figure out the ad industry in New York. In 2009, 2010, I was also doing consulting on much more serious medical devices. And one of the things that came out of that was a timer for diabetes patients that told them when last they took their injection.
That's Validose.
It was actually not Validose.
That was TimeSeine.
They're similar genres, right? So TimeSeine was version 0, or like MVP, right? And we sold that company to Big Food Biomedical. And then I also invested in Common Sensing, which was version 1 and 2. And then Validose, was 6 more generations of development over the last 5 years, and now we're ready to scale it, right? So it's like, but Validose is way more sophisticated. It borrows some of the thinking that we had in Sniff Labs around gestural sensing. It borrows technologies from and sort of know-how from every other medical device that I've touched, and it really we're aggressively building sort of like the business case around that to scale that now. We're heading into our Series Seed price round in March, and it's something that has the ability to change the addiction landscape in the US, but also abroad.
That's incredible, and you received some notoriety, right? Like I saw pictures of you with Martha Stewart and Dr. Oz.
Yeah, and Natalie Schneider and a couple, and the guys from CNET and Google. So we received a $1.5 million media prize from Publicis Health Media from the Garage event. it was the week before that I decided that we had to open our market to opiates and to all intranasal drugs. So I was going through that motion, and I was actually, it's crazy things entrepreneurs do. The call to be invited to present that day happened while I was on a family holiday in the mountains of West Virginia, and I didn't have cell reception, and I was like, but I knew what the prize money was, and I wanted to be on stage and present. So I went and I bought a satellite phone, and I took the call with the satellite phone, and
Really?
and I've
Oh my
only used that
God.
satellite phone for one call,
One
and it was the
call.
call with them, and then I
Totally
was
worth
showed
it.
up and I delivered. And now we're going through the motion of spending that and promoting Validose. And because of COVID, we backed off a little bit, and we're going to accelerate because this year's event was canceled and was pushed to next year. So we actually had a 2-year window to engage fully with the media platforms that sponsored that.
Let's tell our audience what is Validose, because I think we skipped that part. What is it?
So Validose is basically a device. It's an intranasal drug delivery device. It wraps around. It's a security sleeve, an exoskeleton that wraps around existing drug packaging. And what happens is that it allows you the ability, once the drug is loaded, you can log in, you can hear it, and then you can take the drug. So it helps with adherence. Now it's locked. I can't log. So you use your fingerprint to log in, and it basically helps with adherence, drug security, child lock, prevents abuse. It knows if I'm logging in and sharing with a friend. So not dissimilar from TimeSeine in the fact that we figured out how to put our timer on multiple brands of pens. When Big Pharma were unable to ever work together. They all had sub-brands with electronics in that eventually failed because they were sub-brands. They don't receive the same attention as their primary non-connected main product lines. So we basically built an accessory for TimeSeine that was an accessory for all the primary product lines for all these pharma companies. So we were basically eating their lunch in and also bypass all their IP because they had in their mind like they could only file IP that would not change the FDA classification of their existing product line. So we came in as an accessory, and just in Europe and here in the US, just circumvented that. And with this, so, like I said, I'm using 20 years of learnings to say, how do I accelerate, go to market with this? How can I serve every intranasal drug in the market in the first year of this rollout? So yeah, so this is one of the products I'm most excited about for 2021. We're also finalizing, it was on hold everything was on hold this year because if it wasn't COVID related, it was on hold. So, or it was going to go slow campaign, which is frustrating because normally we go pretty fast. We also have an electric wheelchair that was designed for children and adults that would turn any wheelchair into an electric wheelchair. The next generation of that is coming alive right now. So we have a prototype of that that we actually developed with the Airbus Business Accelerator BizLab in 2019. And so that's coming to fruition now, and it's looking great. And we'll probably do 2 more rounds of development, and then it will be ready for clinical release.
That's incredible. So before we get to like sort of our main course, right, the ventilator project, which I'm eager to hear about, let's pause for a second. Let's talk about your process. How do you approach these things? Like, how do you find the ideas? How do you rank the ideas or select or decide which ones to focus on? How do you, like, this whole process of experimentation? Walk me through it.
So historically, it was pure like brute force and enthusiasm and just being excited about everything and understanding enough of the technology to hurt yourself, right? Because you're like, I can do everything, and like you have a dinner with a friend. I mean, TimeSeine literally came about where I sat at a table with a friend, and he was saying how he would love to know whether he took his injection or not. And he says every time he sits down with me, we immediately start talking about all these product ideas, and then he forgets whether he took it or not. So I went home and I cut apart a Nike Nike sports watch, and I duct taped the guts of that to a cap, and I gave it to him. And I said, just press this button every time you take your injection, and we'll test whether it's real or not. And he loved it. He's like, we need to make this into a product. I had fans of TimeSeine invest in other companies of mine because they were type 1 diabetics, and they said that invention changed their life so much that they want to support other projects of mine. I'm like, well, I don't know. Like having impact on somebody else's life doesn't mean that economically you've followed all the right steps. I think, as founders from that company, we had an early bust up. We could have sold it for 50 million. We sold it for 5. The biggest takeaway for any founder is companies are projects. You're going to do many in your lifetime. Learn how to play nicely, even with the people you don't like, so that you can finish what you started and sell the company earlier, but don't sell it after an acrimonious exit of your founders. It's like you have to agree to disagree and be more mature about it. I think we could have been more mature about it. Yeah, and I think a lot of money is wasted in business fighting about things that you could have put on hold until after you sold the company.
Right. Looking back, did it mature today? Are you like less gung-ho about projects and more, I guess, strategic, calculated? Yes.
I think I'm paying way more attention now to the strategy of what 10x Beta works on, what I want to work on, while trying to maintain an open channel to help other people, right? Because in the past, I would say yes to everything and then probably perform poorly on 80% of them. Even though LinkedIn hides all the mistakes you made, it just talks about how awesome the things were that you finished. Okay, but the reality is, if you're doing 120 products over 10 years as a company, you probably didn't get to do another 500 that you were asked of. So we're too busy, we can't do this, the economics didn't work out. I've been forced to come up with better systems and to be much more formulaic on how I live my life. So I get up at 5 every morning. I have my call with my business partners in Validose every morning at 6, because we all start working at 5:36. So and we did this entire year. If we didn't do it, the product would be dead in the water. Because once the kids, everyone is kids, they wake up. You've got that 7 to 9 morning routine of feeding them, dressing them, and then dropping them off somewhere, right? And then you have a very tiny window to go and do work with your team, and then kids again, and then family, and then and then work again at night. So focusing on routine, which I was never good at when I was single and solo or without kids. I just worked all the time, and it was like and it was social, it was fun. I'm much more protective of my routine now than I've ever been. In terms of what I choose to work on, I use different language, and I'm learning new language to say, this is interesting, let me review it and get back to you. I never give an answer on the spot anymore. And then as a thesis, what 10x Beta works on and what I work on, I obviously decide myself what I work on, but for 10x Beta, I let the team weigh in on any new projects. Because the way I attracted some of the best talent in New York to work with me was to make a commitment to work on relevant, scalable things, not to work just for how fast we can push dollars through the door. And I think that you can make money this way. You make it differently than if you just a volume transaction, right? And you have to. It's hard to stay focused on that mission when you're in a down economy and you're like, shit, I'll take any work just to pay
the bills.
Pay the bills, right? And yes, we were, and we're highly capable of doing that and doing it more effectively than most. But we are now in a position where we get to choose way more interesting things to work on, and we're doubling down on that space. So in terms of choosing for relevance and scale, we loved working on the ventilator project. We loved working on other COVID-related projects that helped to build sort of like, let's call it like viral security and solutions that would help at least the East Coast or the US do testing faster, do ventilation, oxygen concentration, other applications, and then scale that globally. In terms of scale, I think we're going to do a lot of products in drug delivery. We're accelerating in that space, and Validose was the third product, but the one that sort of like really ramped up our know-how in that space. So I think we'll have a big impact on that, and we want to have a big impact in that space because we feel that you can solve for addiction of prescription drug abuse if you approach that with a fine balance of hardware, software, and user experience design, and you layer that into an existing archaic system of let's give you as many pills as we can possibly serve you in 30 days.
Yeah, exactly. And people's routine. I mean, people are used to doing something in a certain way, and you're not completely changing it. You're just like Validose, you're building a wrapper around it, right? Which is just smart.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, when I was sniff tag versus whistle, right? Whistle was like a modern day equivalent of what sniff tag was, but whistle did everything right. Like it was tiny, or what is it? Not Wi-Fi. There was another dog application, but lightweight hardware, app connected or GSM connected, did everything that it needed to do for a fraction of the price, probably 1/10 of the price in terms of hardware. Everyone that worked on adherence tech, like all these pill bottles that were connected, it's old technology. None of that stuff. Everything needs to be updated every 24 to 36 months if you want to keep in pace with technology, right? So where I see us play is doing a lot more work in that space over the next 10 years and building this ecosystem of products, whether under the Validose brand or in partnerships with other pharmaceutical companies, to really help think and rethink what these global IoT drug security ecosystems look like, and have them evolve as other technologies evolve at the speed of the phone, not at the speed of a car.
Exactly. So since you mentioned the ventilator project, let's talk about that. I read an article about you, again, gaining some notoriety. Meet the South African who helped build a low-cost ventilator in just 1 month, right? Obviously, the sensational headline is there, but let's break it down. The project is called SpiraWave.
Yeah, so SpiraWave is the name of the product, and Spira Devices is the company that we set up to house that IP and to house that all the transactions with the city and other governments. We set up a consortium between Voice Technologies, New Lab, and 10x Beta to build a team to go after or to respond to the city's need for ventilators. The city and state requested from the federal government a certain quota of ventilators based on what their projections were. That I think they received less than 3% of what they asked for. And I think the messaging from the White House at the time was that the national stockpile is for the federal government and not for the states, which is counter to every administration prior. The reality was that the US just wasn't ready, and any state, any city, and New York got it first because New York is your European entry hub. It's point of entry for the world, right? And we have so we had to jump in and be ready to make up to 50,000 ventilators. We said we'll make 3,000 for New York City, but we're going to buy air pressure sensors and we're going to buy critical lead time components to be able to make 50,000. So we built a rapid supply chain while we were designing, doing about a prototype variant a day. Normally we would do, if I contract this stuff under normal conditions, I would say, give us 6 to 8 weeks per iteration. We did a new iteration every day. I think we did 8 prototypes in the first 5 days. And we were working with MIT, MIT had a research group that developed a ventilator, I think 10 years prior, that was basically a resuscitation bag squeezer or automator, but it didn't have all the smarts at that time. So they had spent 11 days before we met them and uprevved that design to be a 21st century design. They needed partners from around the country and from around the world to jump in on their open source work and say, we're going to build the version for South Africa. We're going to build the version for Belgium. We're going to build the version for New York City. So they open sourced everything once they vetted it. So we met the very colorful, smart, and interactive group on day 11 of their work, day 1 of our work. Okay. And we realized that there were 3 or 4 projects that they were running in parallel that we could support with. So 10x Beta jumped in. I had my South African team work on the open source ventilators. So the South African team designed 2 ventilators with MIT for both Vecna and for the open source MIT one. Value engineered, ready for global manufacturing, to metric and imperial standards, so that it's easy for anybody to manufacture them and super low cost, $500. Then for the New York team, we needed these things to work at the Jacob Javits Center with their own stands, and they needed to be like medical equipment, medical grade equipment that could go into hospitals in New York City. So a very different product, but same outcome. And so our team here in New York focused on the New York version, and we got the EUA approval, which was version 1.6 on the first one, 30 days. Then at that moment in time, New York was just teetering on running out, but they weren't running out yet. So the doctor said, can you add all these features and this and that after they started using it, right? And so we got another month to add more features and bells and whistles. And then after another 30 days, which I think we had 4 more EUA applications and uprevs, because every time you make a change, you go back to the EUA or the FDA
to get the approval.
You get an uprev. So I think that confused people who only applied once, right? But what we got was a really sophisticated product that was able to keep, theoretically able to keep somebody alive for 30 days. Because bear in mind, we did not test these on humans while designing them. We tested them on pigs, and we tested them on dummies, and we tested them on lung simulators, and we tested them on ourselves, which you don't want to say too much about, but it says with the syscontrol functions. But we had not until they got EUA approval were they allowed to be used on patients.
So there's a lot of uncertainty in the whole development.
Well, the uncertainty if you don't know how to do it, right? But we learned everything about ventilation in the first month, and we got access to some of the best simulation equipment in the country through MIT, through Jefferson University, through the city of New York, and through FLIR, who have supplied us and rented hardware to us. So we were not the only people going after designing a ventilator, but we're definitely the only independent group that shipped 3,000. So I think there were some groups that maybe made 100. At Michigan, we're talking about making 1,000, but I don't know how many of those actually shipped. And that makes a huge difference. Like, I think even if you get approval in 30 days, it means if you can't ship product at scale, you don't matter. Your contribution, I feel, doesn't matter. If you did it as an exercise to make yourself feel better, it's like great, but that's
it
not
wasn't a PR stunt. You were actually doing this to save lives and help, the city of New York fights the pandemic. And when the pandemic is at that scale, you need to scale up your production.
Yeah. So we were working 120 hour weeks. It's like, the last time I worked those many hours was when I was, behind for an exam in architecture school. And I had to do 3 months of work in 3 weeks. But no, it was amazing. Just the quality of the team, quality of interactions, and the focus, the entire collective team. So, we compressed 12 to 18 months of work into 1 month. And then we also compressed 12 to 18 months of human emotion into 1 month. So you deal with that. but everyone showed up, and everyone showed up while the rest of the city was under lockdown. New York was a zombie town. There was no one on the roads at night, like 1 a.m. when I drove home. It was just an eerie time to be in a factory with 100 other people. And we followed the protocols. We wore our masks, or kept our distance, and we limited our vectors, and we just worked. That's all we did. We worked and slept.
You got it done. The companies, the people in this consortium that you mentioned, have you worked with them before, or was this the first time?
So I have a long-term relationship with New Lab, because of my I was one of their founding members, and I have been at New Lab for 8 years, both the beta space and now the primary space. Boyce, I've met a couple of times prior. We were kicking the tires and maybe doing some work on the electric wheelchair. I've helped some of their former clients and vice versa, but we've never worked together. So this was a first try, and we learned. It was like, I would describe it as a warts and all relationship, right? That we saw everything that was good and everything that was bad about each other for for the entire duration, and now we're taking a bit of a breather. And next year we can, like when COVID is done, we can go hang out and have a drink.
I think that's an incredible feat. The fact that you guys collaborated on such a tight schedule with so much at stake without ever working together before, that's incredible.
A lot of personalities that on a normal contract, a normal process, I think would have caused tension with each other, and there was tension that I was like the innovation ops leader, right? So making sure that we go at the speed and not slow down, and then you win some, you lose some. There were some people, I made the mistake of bringing in people on day 7 and day 10 and day 12, and then realizing if you weren't in the room on day 1, you can't catch up. Very few people were able to catch up unless we parcel out the work, that they work on something that's starting from new. And because the pressure intellectually, emotionally, and physically on going at that pace nonstop, and then joining midstream and not understanding where you fit was real. So all the personalities that we would have had to deal with on a normal day, on a normal project schedule, where everyone put it on hold, and they just got it done. So every now and then we sort of like something bubbled to the surface, and we just dealt with it in real time. There was literally no time to waste in solving conflict, and no time to waste in considering being too nice or being too quiet. Everyone had their conviction to build the best product for New Yorkers and the rest of the world right there and then. And no one compromised safety. There were no shortcuts. Everyone was auditing everyone's work in real time. And now that we have hindsight, we did build this. Like I said, we did 4 different iterations, and then we manufactured 3,000 of those. We're going to push this product all the way to a 510K authorized device or approved device, so that we can see it in ambulances and ERs in the future, because it has a long-term utility, and no one's ever really. Everyone's always seen this as something that's for like a developer, an emerging market context, and it's not. It's for the world.
So that's the next phase. That's the next phase of the project.
Yes. So that will be a separate team from the Validose team, a separate team from the 10x beta team, and as I talk about focus and where we put our time, I think next year we'll see us building these very tight-knit, highly focused product teams that focus on every one of these products. And whether I'm a board member or an advisor on some of them, I will lead Validose next year.
So listen, before we wrap up, you're doing so much interesting stuff. How can our listeners learn more about you, keep in touch with you, keep up with you? Like, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best thing these days. I mean, it's obviously I'm on almost every social channel, but LinkedIn is the one where I actually write back.
you're responsive on LinkedIn. Okay.
Yeah, and so I'm responsive on LinkedIn for professional connections. And then if somebody wants to work with us or work with us, invest in one of our products, or have a conversation around business collaborations, then emailing us at 10x Beta. Our website has the email address, and it's easy to get hold of us. Yeah, or worst case, you just send an email to Marcel at 10x Beta, and it goes straight to me.
There you go. I'll put all that in the show notes. Marcel, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yaniv, thanks very much. Okay, have a great day. We'll speak soon.